Okay, so we are recording, just so you know. All right, and I will edit this part out. Hey everyone, this is Jackie Cooper with the Crypto Blockchain DeFi Conversation Cruise, and we are doing a virtual episode today. We have experienced a wonderful cruise, and it was great weather, great conversations,
Weather.
fun people, fun times, but a lot of work and a lot of brainstorming and looking at how we can help our community. So we do have another friend and colleague who will be hopping on. We have, tech can be a friend or a foe, and sometimes it sometimes it happens that it doesn't always cooperate. So when she hops back on, we'll have her introduce herself. But most everyone who's been on probably is familiar with me, and you might be familiar with Patrina because we have co-worked together on our broadcast, BLI Live. But in case you're new to who Patrina is, and in case this is the first of the broadcasts and you haven't had a chance to watch the others, Patrina, why don't you go ahead and do a quick 1 minute thing to introduce yourself so people can know about your talents and background.
So notice she said 1 minute thing. So I will try to be good with that because I can't be long-winded. I'm already like 15 seconds into my 1 minute. So I am Patrina Felton Smith. I am the CEO and principal consultant of the Business of Charity. We are a consultancy that works with nonprofits and small businesses, helping them with grant writing, formation services, and executive coaching. And I am also a GPC or a grant professional certified. And so we know all things. Well, okay, I won't say all things, most things in this space. And in this space, we also assist with fundraising using cryptocurrency digital assets. So I am happy to be here today. And that was probably just under a minute. I probably made it today.
Well, Patrina and I have, so when we do our BLL lives, we're always trying to do 15 minutes, and we end up always over that.
Always.
Always. But we actually have another colleague of ours who was on the cruise. She's on, and
And off.
it's okay. So
Oh, but she's so amazing. So I'm hoping her technology will, level out and she will be able to really engage with us tonight. There she is. Yes.
hey,
Thank you,
Remy.
guys.
So you know what? Um, we're going to grab you when we can and have you
Right?
introduce yourself.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you, Patrina. Thank you, Jackie. So my name is Remy, and I work with Black Wallet Ltd. You can find us at www.blackwalletgroup.com. And so, what's interesting about what we do at Black Wallet is we hold various sister brother companies, and our flagship company is Kiros Coin. Kiros Coin is basically a disruptive crypto company, where in lieu of the typical crypto company that you might see, we offer various ways to get involved, and that includes the idea of having the essentially just there's a various ways, but like the real world assets uh, which backs us up, and so we use that. And so, for example, if you are into the concept of like micronations, if you guys know what that is, we have ability to use like cryptocurrency in lieu of like fiat currency, and we do things like that essentially. But we also offer other ways to get involved, like investing. And what's nice about what we do at at Kira's Coin is we offer the ability to get involved, and instead of like the gas fees, you are essentially getting a hold of can I start over? I'm sorry, guys.
Right
I
ahead.
wasn't.
Go right ahead. Remember, I can edit anything.
Okay, sorry. I actually have to use a bathroom.
Okay, we'll edit that too.
Okay, so you guys can do. I just have to pee. I have to pee.
Okay, we'll edit
So,
that.
Okay. I'll be
so,
right.
I'll mute your mic, and then when you
Thanks.
play, I better not, because I want you to be able to say when you're back on. So
I'm sorry, guys.
it's okay. It's okay. We'll do an edit on that side.
right.
Okay. Had to pee.
All right. So, Patrina, we are going to be talking today about women in blockchain and technology. And I'm going to start with the first question, but I'm going to modify it a little bit. So, the first question is what are the unique challenges that we as women face in blockchain industry, and how can we address them to ensure greater diversity and inclusion? About that, I want to ask you the question, and it includes me as well. Did you ever think that you would become involved in the business? I know that you're in the business of charity, but did you ever think that you would become involved in a business type that would be touching or involved with blockchain or cryptocurrency? Because I think that that's something that when we as young girls are growing up, maybe now different than before, but it's about the technology and the STEM side. So did you ever picture yourself in a career involving or touching science or technology?
No. Well, science, yes, because at one point I was going to go be a psychologist. So that was, one of psychology, law, and then I end up in nonprofits. So go figure. I put it all together. So, in that regard, yes, but in terms of blockchain, cryptocurrency, AI, absolutely not. If you had asked me this even 10 years ago, um, as I was running the nonprofit organization, I would have said that, like probably many of my other nonprofit peers, small business owners, I'd be like, oh, I don't need that. Why do I need to know that to run a nonprofit as a nonprofit CEO? And as I became involved in it 2 years ago, I began to see the application, not just from the standpoint of it being a currency. And I think we alluded to this and we talked about it a little bit in one of our panels, is that there are other applications for this. It's not just about using it as a currency, but also using it in day-to-day applications. So for instance, one of the things that I do as a consultant is that I need to obtain information from individuals, such as their social security numbers, to apply for EINs, employer identification numbers, with the IRS, and they have a very strict process that as a third party obtaining it, I have to obtain their signature with information. So I prepare that form and I send it using sign.co, which is a blockchain based application, very similar to other programs out there. Adobe, comes to mind, Adobe Signature, as well as any other, format you might use. But this one is entirely based on the blockchain. And that was what attracted me to it when I started looking for applications that I could use in lieu of Adobe or the other big one that I can't think of at the moment. And yes, yes. And so when I saw that and the price point, I am not an affiliate, but the price point is amazing. I'll just put that out there. That sign.co became my primary tool. But I think that's the big thing, is for us to begin to have a conversation around what other places can we integrate this into our day-to-day lives. And I think that's going to be the key thing. And I think that's where, when we see that application in our day-to-day lives, women run, for the most part, single mothers. I think the numbers on single mothers is roughly 60%. It's pretty high. We run our day-to-day lives. We're always looking for something that makes that life easier. And so I think that when we start to see that integrate into our day-to-day lives, we will see more women becoming interested in how to adopt this technology. And then, the women who are already leading in this space, can offer even more insight into how we can do that, and then get involved in the larger STEM and STEAM picture of the space.
Yeah, I know for me, when I was a little girl, I knew I
Mhm.
wanted to be a lawyer. I
Mhm.
actually wanted to be the president of the United States, go figure.
I wanted to too. Okay, so not
But I
exactly
also
what it
wanted to
was.
be, I know. I also wanted to be a research scientist because I loved, the idea of exploring.
Yes.
So when I went to college, my major, was science, technology, and society. So, many years forward, when I learned about blockchain, it felt, as you've heard me say, it felt comfortable, but I never thought about going. I knew I loved the law area, so I wanted to go that route. But I even in the law side, I was always focusing on science. So it was healthcare law, patients' rights. It was always looking at how can I, help others integrating. But it had a science bend because I liked learning bioethics.
Mhm.
And so the blockchain side and the technology side has intrigued me. And now in going to hackathons, that's been very interesting. And when I've gone to hackathons, since the topic is women in technology, I've seen a lot of women at the
Mhm.
hackathon,
Mhm.
even though I have not taken a look to head count to see how many women versus men.
Mhm.
But again, there are some, but it's probably proportionate to the same number of women that are in STEM.
Mhm.
Probably not as many. Um, I know that the question is about how do we ensure greater diversity and inclusion, and I think from my perspective, which is another reason why I started writing the Bitcoin Cinderella books, it's
Mhm.
about education, it's about exposure, it's about
Absolutely.
letting people just know that the industry exists because I
Mhm.
am currently teaching in elementary school. And the only thing that I think the teachers are aware of, unless I talk to them about it, is artificial intelligence because of the fact that there's so much media hype about it.
Right.
In terms of what blockchain is, or obviously they've heard about cryptocurrency, they've heard
Mhm.
about Bitcoin, but they don't understand how can it be applied from a learning perspective.
Right.
Maybe they've heard about gaming and
Mhm.
technology and
Mhm.
NFTs, but we're not using that in definitely not at the elementary school, maybe at the
Mhm.
middle or high school, which I'm not at, to excite learning, to
Exactly.
have it be like a technology field trip.
Mhm.
And that's something that, for whoever's listening to this,
Mhm.
reach out to me. I know that on the nonprofit side, which you also help
Mhm.
me incorporate, the Blockchain Legal Institute Foundation, we have classes outlined there for schools, for community groups, so that way you can actually do these type of virtual field trips, which
Mhm.
I think are really cool, because if you can let a young adult or a child kind of um, apply their creativity.
Mhm.
And that's why I like hackathons, because you take an idea, then you make mistakes in the coding, you try to problem solve it, and it's a safe spot to learn, and then maybe come out with a product that actually can
Mhm.
be used. And that I think that's what entrepreneurship is, but it's just done
Absolutely.
a different space.
Mhm.
But how do you think we can do greater diversity and inclusion?
So, from the standpoint of including more women in the space, I think we are just looking at, again, expanding it and potentially partnering with those entities that are focused on STEM and STEAM education for young women. It's interesting. I went to it was I guess, kind of an opening or a group celebration for young women who have been selected to partner with those in STEAM and STEM through a nonprofit organization here in Houston. Amazing work that they're doing, but I hadn't heard of them until that night, and I met them through their CPA. She
Mhm.
invited me to come out and engage with them. And so, working with those who are already in the space doing the work and expanding it not just into engineering and mathematics and science, but also adding in blockchain and AI I think will help them also understand there are career options here. So
Yes.
you mentor them, partner them with a mentor in a space where they wanted to go. Not everybody was in the tech field because there were actually a couple of realtors, project managers that came into it as well. But I think that's part of it. I think it's opening the door and giving them the education that these things are an option and they're available to you. And it, it doesn't matter, who you are, that you're a female by gender, or even ethnicity by race, because actually doing research on this topic before I came in, recognized that some of the top leaders, matter of fact, of the top 25 leaders, actually many of them are women of color. And I was frankly surprised to see that, but happy to see that at the same time. So, I think it's about education and awareness, again, as you pointed out, that will help broaden and bring more people in.
Now, I found some statistics. You always have to be careful with stats and where they come from.
Right.
So, take this with a grain of salt, guys
Yeah.
who are listening to this. But, again, if these stats are true, then this is very interesting. It said that, and the location of these stats were from, I'll list it down below. But basically, it says that a study highlighted that 43% of individuals interested in Bitcoin investments were women, which I thought was interesting. Again, from the perspective, like you said, that women are usually these days they might be managing the households. In earlier years, they might have been managing the house, but maybe not the money of the house.
Right.
Because of division of labor, so to speak. But these days, I think more women are probably involved with that. And the other thing that this article talks about is that of the 6% of CEOs in blockchain were women.
Yeah.
Compared to 17% of CEOs in broader technology.
Yeah.
So that still is a underrepresentation.
True.
But I'm not sure how many blockchain companies there are. So, that would be a question that I have to, but still it's only 6% of those companies. And the other stat, which I thought was interesting, was talking about gender disparity and in terms of capital raising for web startups. And that for all male teams, they secured an average funding of maybe 29.2 million, while those led by all female teams received an average of just 7.8 million.
Yeah.
So, again, that's 3 times less than, actually greater than that. And then the other stat that I'm looking at here talked about only 15% of the venture capital check writers were female. So, again, if the venture capitalists are not the ones giving the money, then it's the men giving the money. So that would get, a larger group of men that might be investing in other gentlemen.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And what was the other stat that I thought was interesting? 34% of the women that were surveyed, and they didn't say what the size of the survey group was, expressed some level of confidence, as opposed to 17.7% of men sharing the same sentiment about the future of cryptocurrencies. So women were looking at cryptos as a possible place to invest, while men were looking, now obviously the time period of what it is now, with going up, people might have changed their tune, but when the survey was going on. So women who own crypto had risen significantly from 18% at the beginning of 2023 to 29% at the beginning of 2024. So, again, but it's all about knowing what cryptocurrency is and how to take your money and then make a decision about it. So, I think, part of the exposure of to gain greater diversity and inclusion, it's not just starting in the schools, but it's definitely starting in the colleges. At least having access to a club maybe that would allow you to ask questions and feel safe to ask questions. Or knowing that there are virtual meetups, where you can ask. So, but at the same time, for everyone who's listening, that you have to be aware that about doing due diligence for your research, because and you and I have talked about this before, even if you are stepping into this space, you also have to know where to go to get your education about it, and not paying over the top for your degrees for this, because the technology changes so fast that if you invest in one degree, it could be old by the time that you actually want to apply it for a job.
Absolutely.
So, it's like computer languages change all the time. So, if it's not being, it's really one of the things that I think, one of the questions that we talked about prior to the recording, the idea of mentorship. And I really think that if you are going into this space, I know it's hard sometimes, but find the courage to email people that you might want, even if you're not going to ask them for a job. You can ask them for a 10-minute interview where you're interviewing them about how did they learn about this space, their pros and cons, the takeaways that they would advise you if you're just new stepping in, because everyone in this space that I started 10 years ago, everyone in this space has been helpful to me. There has, everyone has a lesson that they've learned that they don't mind sharing, so you don't have to take that same lesson and learn it again. And I think as women, we don't mind asking for help. We just have to learn how to ask for help from the people that will give us the advice that might guide us.
Absolutely.
And so I think that that's a strength that we as women have. I'm going to ask you the next question, and hopefully Remy will be able to hop on. How can women play a pivotal role in shaping the future of decentralized technologies and blockchain governance?
So, I think that is definitely having those who are in the finance area, because you just talked about how many women are funded through venture capitalists. And so that actually has been an issue that I've been writing grants. A couple of clients are in that space. And so we looked at that in terms of how do they access capital, particularly for women and then women of color. And so there are specifically organizations and venture capitalists that are formed of women and women of color who are in this space, and their whole point is to fund those who are not receiving funding now. And so I think it would behoove them to not just look at traditional means of financing, but also look at cryptocurrency as a methodology for funding them. And so I think those who are already here, who have the authority and understand the space, should also venture into this side of it and be able to expand their range of offerings to individuals who need that. So I think that's one way to do it.
Yeah. I also think, again, you and I've talked about the really strong need for everyone, women included, to build your vocabulary. And so when we're talking about the future of decentralized technologies, I really understand what decentralized mean. Now, I was on another call prior to coming onto our recording, and it's actually an investment group of women. And we were talking about DAOs. Now, we're not investing in, we were talking about a lawsuit that just had a decision last week while you and I were on the cruise. It was saying that this California DAO is actually a partnership. And so everyone in the DAO is now liable. And this DAO was not incorporated. So it was very interesting. So it's important that as we as women step into the space, that we learn about different niches to understand what it is that we either might be participating in or investing. so we can understand the liabilities if there are any,
Yeah.
um, and and just to be able to participate. So, like individuals who are in this DAO might have bought a governance token, and that token would be in what they call a treasury. But
Mm-hmm.
if you just kind of you think it's a really cool DAO, which is like a co-op doing
Mm-hmm.
something for, a certain purpose, if you're just in that DAO and you don't understand that there might be a liability if someone's doing
Absolutely.
something wrong, you're there with good intent, and then
Right.
all of a sudden it becomes a problem.
Right.
So, but that's true in no matter what structure. It doesn't have to be DeFi. It could be traditional business.
It could be a nonprofit if it's not incorporated. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because there's
exactly.
nonprofit associations. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it just means that we have to kind of ask questions, understand a
Mm-hmm.
little bit in blockchain governance. What does that mean? It means
Mm-hmm.
how do you interact with people,
Mm-hmm.
but in a paperwork agreement type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we as women, I think, need to ask the technical, the mind questions, but also still follow with your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So if something, is something that you really want to do because you feel that passion and draw towards it,
Mm-hmm.
then just find out how do you do it in a way that can generate the good you want to do, but still protect yourself.
And protect you. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, that happens in many different things. I have had those experiences with boards where the organization did incorporate. They were a nonprofit organization, but they didn't do some of the other things that would maintain what they call the corporate veil. There's a concept in the law called piercing the corporate veil,
Yeah.
and if you don't do certain things, like for instance, have separate bank accounts and to make sure that separate, meaning separate for the business, separate for the personal accounts, and you're operating out of one account. And this is even for small businesses. You pierce the corporate veil, and the protection that you thought you had being an LLC or a nonprofit, you don't have. So then everything is open to liability. All the board members are now, subject to being sued for their personal assets. So that's the reason why anything that you're doing, you want to make sure you do your due diligence and ask questions about, the formation and the process of leadership, the administration, so that way you don't get caught up in something, or if you do, you went into it with your eyes wide open, so you're aware of what you may be facing. But most of the time, we don't always know what questions to ask. So do your research, listen to podcasts like this where you are listening and learning and being able to say, okay, I need to know just a little bit about how y'all are set up before I get involved in this.
Yeah. So the other question,
Mhm.
and we are going to talk about some women that we know in the space as well, but what initiatives or programs exist to encourage young women to pursue careers in blockchain development and cryptocurrency that you know of?
So I did some couple of things, and I was very happy to see that there is actually a blockchain council. It's actually called the Black Women Blockchain Council, where they actually do work around cybersecurity, around Web3. They do a lot of things in the space where you can come in and learn about um, the space and what you can do to connect with it. And then there was a executive director of the Blockchain Foundation, who is their mission is to educate the world about cryptocurrency. And so I think that again, it's funny. I believe Anthony Howell said that Google is the friend. In this case, I'm going to agree with him and say Google is our friend in this. Um, so Anthony, if you catch this broadcast, you're gonna be like, she's not gonna let that go. Yeah, I'm probably not. But it's what, Google and find organizations that are in the space, and you can then connect to one that resonates with you. Their mission resonates with you, and begin to do more. Come in and BLI. There's a resource library there. They can also give you good information that is here, because underlying everything, I think we've said this year until we're probably blue in the face and y'all are sick of hearing it. Education, education, education is the key here.
Yeah, it definitely is the key. And especially with anytime that you're in the investment space, and again, not legal advice, not investment advice, not financial advice, but anytime you're in the investment space, you do have to ask the questions, because even myself, when I was, as because my background's a teacher, and in addition to being a lawyer, when I started in the teaching side, someone comes to your school and says, "Oh, well, let's invest, into this mutual fund," and
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I was lazy. I didn't look. Now, I did okay, but you can't always just make that assumption.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put, and really it's power. You can't put the power of your own financial life in someone else's hands.
Right.
We definitely always do.
We do.
Sometimes we without even thinking, we do that. But, it's important for us, especially as women, to kind of, understand where our dollars are going. Even if we're mingling it with someone else that we care about, we still have to understand where the dollars are.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, we can make the investment decisions. Yeah, and that's something I only learned about late in life. So it wasn't something that was taught when I was in college, or if it was, I wasn't even focusing on that. So another question is female entrepreneurs, and blockchain community. You've talked about a few associations. I would also say that there are federal grants to support women in the technology area, for sure.
Sure.
What women have you come across in your research? Because I know I've come across a number, and I think, we can kind of share different names, but any name that pops out for you that you think might be someone that they might want to look up their bio and kind of check out?
Yeah, and I was very interested in seeing the information around Cleve Messendor, who is the executive director of the Blockchain Foundation. And she has been a part of different administrations, most recently the Obama administration. There's a link for her for LinkedIn and Twitter to follow her. And so I just found that really interesting because it appears that she has a really broad knowledge in this space, along with Oliyinka Odenaran, who
Saw
is
that
also,
name. I also saw that name.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm about to say 16 years of compliance expertise.
Mhm.
So not just in blockchain, but in the financial industry. And again, we were just talking about what's the importance here in DeFi. You have to have someone who has that knowledge and experience in finance in general to understand how to bring it into alignment with us and our day-to-day usage, because until we get to that point where it's readily acceptable, and I think Chris Smithmeyer mentioned this, that when it is both centralized and decentralized, that we have adopted it in that on that level, that it's easy access no matter which currency that we choose to use, then that's when we're really going to see the acceptance. And so having women who are leading this conversation, who are understanding both sides of this, kind of like our book. I think at one point we were going to title it "Both Sides of the Coin."
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
the key part, is understanding both sides of the coin so that we can usher this into ready, accessible adoption. And I think women are going to lead that conversation.
So a few names that I'm going to share before we kind of sign off in a moment. Elizabeth Stark actually is a blockchain entrepreneur and educator who founded Lightning Labs in 2016. And Lightning Labs actually is responsible for developing the Lightning Network, a technology aimed at resolving Bitcoin scalability issues by facilitating faster, less expensive transactions, which are really kind of
Mhm.
pivotal in taking Bitcoin to the next layer in terms of working with businesses. Because if you understand a little bit about Bitcoin, and I am a Bitcoin miner, if like in El Salvador, for example, if you're buying coffee, it takes a little bit of time for transactions to go
Mhm.
through. So when you're starting to have more transactions, you need an
Mhm.
alternative network, and that's what the Lightning Network is. It creates more paths, more like access roads when you're driving a car, so you can
Mhm.
get to the main road. So that was pretty cool that a woman was involved with that. And then Kathleen, hopefully I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, Brightman. She co-founded Tezos in 2016, again, 2016. And that's a platform that supports smart contract deployment and peer-to-peer transactions. And, again, it's just, again, another tech company with a woman involved. And then I'm just scrolling down to some of the other women that I see here. In terms of, leaders, I can't forget Sandra Rowe, who is the CEO of the Global Blockchain Business Council, of which I'm a media ambassador for. She's been advocating for this area for years, and she's, leading the way, skipping around the globe, talking, and also making sure that the education is solid. So very, very, and she was in the financial side. So again, just a lot of women who are definitely in leadership roles that we might not think about. But I know that they probably had to break the glass ceiling to get there, and so actually, if you're listening, any women in tech and you want to be interviewed, love to hear your story.
Absolutely.
I think that, again, everyone who has these type of talks and conversations will inspire another person to maybe step into where they can be in our community, because we're all problem solvers, and this is a very multidisciplinary type of community. So I know we have like 1 more minute for another quick question, so I'm going to ask one more question. What impact do you believe increasing female representation in blockchain will have on the overall evolution of the technology, especially regarding regulatory frameworks and societal impact?
Women are more inclusive just across the board. And I know there's probably some man out there who's thinking, here we go. But no, really, we tend to factor in all aspects of life when we are looking at solving a problem, from the issue of the bottom line when you're thinking from a corporate standpoint, but also thinking about the human side of it, the human impact. How do we make this palatable? Because yes, we're a business and we're entrepreneurs, but we're also looking at how do we make this work for our entire group of employees or those who we're connected with. And so we factor those pieces in. And I think that's going to be important as we begin to move forward, because it's great to have a coin that we can access. But if it doesn't make sense for us to apply it from the standpoint of paying for school lunches, or, accessing Uber, for us to be able to move from one place to another, then we're not going to use it. We're going to use what is easier for us to do. And I think women factor those types of things into the equation. Not saying that men don't. There are some men out there who I have heard who definitely do that, but women tend to do it more often. And I think that's the key thing.
I think that we all come to the compliance table, so to speak, with different viewpoints. And I think that for many years, the majority of the individuals creating the legislation and the compliance rules were men. And so I think that it's important to have multiple viewpoints contributing to this conversation, because it might take a different orientation, just twist to kind of open up the door for a different application.
Absolutely.
So, again, I'm hoping that, we can, as a community, encourage young ladies to go into the tech side and to have them understand that if they want to do coding, they can. If they want to do marketing, they can. If they want to do law, they can. But they can do anything they want within this tech business. It's just a different model. It's no different than brick and mortar. So and encouraging everyone. Any last minute thoughts before we sign off?
So one other woman that I think we just have to mention is you, Jackie Cooper. Crypto Mom 2, that's where I learned about you, started following you and learned about this space. And so I don't think we can leave tonight without giving our nod to you for pioneering in this space. Your book is, about helping your daughter understand the space as well. And I think that that's just, it's so like many women, we're trying to solve the problems for our lives, for our children. And I just have to give you credit for that. I wouldn't be in this space if it weren't for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, the Bitcoin Cinderella books were definitely written for my daughter and all the other girls and little boys too. But it's to kind of break the barrier of the understand that fairy tales and tech can combine and be fun, and kind of open up a whole new world, sort of a different science tech genre.
Absolutely.
So anyway, it's been fun traveling with you on the cruise as well as just on the path of life in general.
Yeah.
And and totally grateful and appreciative. And I know we are doing this right before Thanksgiving. So
Yes.
and no matter when you see this or hear this, every day is a day of Thanksgiving. So we appreciate each of you for following us, for being on your own path and journey. And definitely reach out, let us tell your story. But in the meantime, thank you for listening to this conversation of the crypto blockchain conversation. And Patrina, I know I'll see you next, on our next recording. So everyone, thank you. And we'll also get Remy on the next time.
Next time we got to get her tech stable though.
Yeah, we do. We'll get her Starlink or some other tech.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.